Hello. It's a really sunny day. Hey Gareth.
Hey, good to meet you again.
How are you? This is another one of those videos which is designed to be listened to rather than watched under my loose banner of Choo Choo Chat. But today we're having a...
I'm not sure whether to be offended by that.
It's a funny name. But today we're having a chat about Crossrail, a London railway which isn't opening on time, and so to do that I thought I would talk to the wonderful Gareth Edwards. Did I just shake your hand?
We do it again. No,
this is the official handshake.
It's the official handshake.
If you're watching and not listening, you've just seen a second handshake. Gareth, tell people who you are, for those who don't know who you are. Who or what is London Reconnections?
Yes, so I am Gareth Edwards, also known as John Bull. I am the editor of London Reconnections. We are a website and magazine that for, about 10 years now have talked and written extensively about transport, particularly in London.
And some people have said to me, you should chat to Gareth from London Reconnections. So I thought, fine, and is there a more pertinent time to do this when we're discussing the fact that Crossrail ain't going to launch on time?
It is not.
I need a really good clickbaity title for this video. I think I can do better than Crossrail ain't going to launch on time.
Yeah, you kind of want something snappier than that, I think.
How about why is Crossrail late?
Yeah, I mean, it's more your domain than mine. I'm more of the kind of bad pseudo-Sun newspaper titles.
London Reconnections goes in a lot for bad puns. I go for clickbaity titles. I mean, we were talking off camera a minute ago, and apparently you came up with the whole purple train pun before I thought I did. Are you telling me that you claimed that first?
I'm not going to claim it first. I am going to claim that this is one of those things where you're going to get good things invented at the same time, like Robin Hood films and asteroid movies.
Which asteroid movie are you, just out of interest?
Well, I think you've just got to absolutely go with the absolute terribleness that is Armageddon.
Yeah.
It's got to be Armageddon.
Okay. Hello, good morning. It's a lovely day. We should point out we're here in, where are we? Which park are we in?
We are in the Walthamstow Wetlands, which is very nice, and it's the remains of a very kind of large old waterworks in northeast London.
Well, there is behind us. If you can't see it, I'll do a cutaway now. There's some railway tracks. Why are there railway tracks
There
here?
are indeed. This is the last remaining bit of the East London Waterworks Railway. The one nice thing about running kind of a transport magazine is you tend to end up with an encyclopedic knowledge of where old infrastructure is in places.
Okay.
And this used to carry coal to big pumps that would bring like most of the water in for North London.
And we sit to discuss the fact, and this is it, serious hat on. Although I should point out that I'm going to sit on the fence. You can't see behind the camera, there's a fence. Imagine I'm sitting on it.
Yes.
And I'm going to
They can't see it. It's not a very good fence. I probably wouldn't recommend sitting on that fence.
But for example, I'm literally going to go Crossrail, Elizabeth Line. It's not going to open on time. On one side of the fence, I'm going to be like, so what? Doesn't matter. On the other side, I'm going to go, well, actually, this is important. It does affect some people, and it does matter. Over to you, Gareth.
Right. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. No one in 20 years' time is going to remember that Crossrail opened a year late. It is still, sort of theoretically on budget, if you go by the original budget, not the budget that the Treasury decided it should have, rather than the one that the people building it said it must have. And it's within a year of what was planned, it's going to be open. And for a project of this scale, that's a pretty big achievement. And we have a habit in kind of imagining that Britain is worse at these things than everyone else. We always say, oh, well, it wouldn't happen in Europe. But there's big delays going on in Germany at their airport railways and everything at the moment.
Yeah, I hear the new Berlin airport is apparently a contentious hot potato.
Yeah, and this happens all over the place. So I think in the grand scheme of things, for the vast majority of people who will use it, both sort of Londoners and those from outside of London who can potentially use it as a better way of getting to Heathrow, it's not going to matter.
So you think it will just be a footnote in the history books in years to come?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those little kind of starred asterisks. It's going to be the kind of thing that people like me and people who study transport and that go on about. But actually, most people aren't ever going to know.
Because I mentioned this before, the original 1970s Jubilee line opened 2 years late. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you go back through the history of London railways, I mean, there's pretty much none of them have ever really opened on time.
Did the Victoria line open on time? It almost didn't it?
It almost didn't, and it sort of did, and various bits of it weren't quite open, but we'll pretend they were open, and all of that kind of thing.
And am I right in saying the only reason the Jubilee line extension Canary Wharf opened in time, it's because they had that hard deadline, but because they dropped back to traditional signalling rather than the automated signalling. Is that right?
Jubilee line extension was you get this weird thing in rail projects, which is they're a bit like Star Trek movies. You get a good one, then you get a rubbish one, then you get a good one, then you get a rubbish one. And in the kind of the cycle, luckily Crossrail is on course to be one of the good ones, which is probably not good news for HS2 because that means that has to be the rubbish one. But yeah, Jubilee line was one of the rubbish ones. It had a hard deadline because obviously it was near what is now the O2, it was the Millennium Dome. And the principle behind that was it had a hard deadline. It must open by the millennium, or it's kind of a bit pointless having it.
So, I guess the thing I want to ask first is, I got asked beautifully to be on BBC News 24 channel the day that it happened. We got wind that it was going to be that press release was coming at 10 in the morning.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that was a bit of an open secret in the transport industry for at least a few weeks.
And then, but rather amusingly, I messed up, and then the TfL press office rang me and went, "You got that wrong." And I went, "Oh, you're right, I did," because the press release actually came from Crossrail, not TfL. And I then, because I said that Crossrail had handed over to TfL, and it hasn't been handed over yet, has it? But in the London Reconnections article, which you should all read, linked below,
just down there,
there was a thing where Crossrail basically said to TfL, "We could hand it over, and we think you could open this station, and this station." And TfL went, "No, we want to do the whole thing," or the whole thing being the core section, or nothing. So what state is it in if it were to open today?
So, no, you can get really deep and terribly boring on this, and we do quite regularly.
Please do.
But the thing to remember is Crossrail is the company building it.
Yes.
And the Elizabeth line is the thing that will eventually run. So that's the thing that will have trains, stops, everything else. So one thing you'll notice is TfL, much as I love them, have a bit of a habit of it's Crossrail when things are going wrong. It's Elizabeth line when things are going well, and I suspect Crossrail will probably agree with that if you ask them. What you've got here at the moment is most of the stations are, with some exceptions, are structurally complete. They're good. They could open. They might not be entirely fitted out. Think like London Bridge or some of the stations. Recent Victoria station were when they opened. There's still a bit of bubble wrap on some bits, but they could open. The main problem they've got at the moment is the track, the signalling systems that Crossrail or the Elizabeth line has to interface with. It's got to chat to 3 different types of signalling.
But I thought that was just the western bit. I'm saying this on purpose as a kind of a devil's advocate. I thought that was just the western stretch out by Heathrow. Are you saying it's more extensive
No,
than
it's
that?
more than that, because if you think about it, Crossrail, when it opens fully, so when it opens outside of that kind of core section between Paddington and Abbey Wood, which if anyone can tell you where Abbey Wood is, I'll be impressed. Even people who live in Abbey Wood. So Paddington to Abbey Wood is that core section. Yeah. That's the first bit that will open.
Which interestingly doesn't conflict with anything else.
No.
It's its own little separate
It's its own
entity.
little world.
Yeah.
It's its own little world.
Yeah.
But the moment that has to connect up to the things on the other side, so we're talking to places like Reading or out, again to Heathrow, once you get beyond Paddington and similar, it's running on the same tracks as other trains. So it has to work with the same signalling systems that already exist on the UK railway network. So while Crossrail will have one of the shiniest, newest versions of signalling you can get, which is amazing, and it will mean that they can, over time, run, you're talking sort of 36 trains per hour, potentially, automated through the core of London. But once it gets out onto the other tracks, it's still got to work with the same kind of signalling that's been in place since like 1970 or anything like that. So it's a complex system. It's like, they've got to interface it with all these systems that haven't really been designed to work with shiny new modern trains, and that's complex. And more importantly, it requires an awful lot of testing, and that's the bit where they're behind. It's not that the work hasn't necessarily finished; it's that it hasn't finished quickly enough for them to really comprehensively test what they're doing.
And that's why they've now put it back.
Yeah.
But they've put it back in a rather intriguing way. Again, on the walk from the station to here, we just had this chat because the press release, which if you notice doesn't include the word delay. At no point is the word delay in that press release. Somebody has spent a whole team of people have spent a long time wording that press release. But the key word is autumn. Now, when I hear the word autumn, I think of leaves on the ground, conkers, battles in the playground, but you think of Christmas. So we had this interesting debate on when actually is autumn? Because I'm thinking, oh great, so it'll be running by October of next year, and you're going, no, Geoff.
This is because you are a shiny, lovely person who loves humanity and thinks people are wonderful. I am a horrible person who hates humanity and doesn't trust anyone in the world, which makes me a very good editor and writer of what I do.
You're not horrible. Hang on, you're not horrible. You're all right.
But it means that when you say the standard rule is, there's two things you should always do with a press release.
I know this. Read it from the bottom.
Yeah,
Read
it from the bottom.
All the juicy bits are at the bottom. Yeah.
Whatever is in the 3 or 4 bullet points at the bottom is the bit that they know they have to put in there,
Yeah,
but they don't want anyone
it,
to read. So that's the only bit that you want to read, is the bit at the bottom. The second rule of press releases is if they have a season in them rather than an actual date, you need to think about the last possible day that can count as being that season.
So what is the last possible day that you think autumn 2019 can be?
So I think sort of officially the last possible day that autumn can mean is going to be the 30, well, how many days are there in November?
30 in November,
30 in November.
31 in December. You saying November or December?
So I'm saying that 30th of November is what the last day you could conceptually turn around and go, this is autumn. But it's worth remembering that railways have these kind of milestones built in.
Yeah.
Now, as we know from the Thameslink stuff that happened recently, which again, another project originally called Thameslink 2000.
Ran late by 18 years.
Yeah, ran late by 18 years.
Yeah. Sorry, I know the press people at Thameslink. I'm really sorry to mention that. But it did run late by 18
they've been getting
years.
it for 18 years. They're used to it by now. But that was a lesson in never, ever put a date in the title of your project.
Well, that's it. But TfL. Sorry, we've opened up so many avenues. But TfL Crossrail, I've got this obsession about collecting the oyster wallets, and they've got opening December 2018 on this set of 10 oyster wallets, which people will have forever and go, it didn't open. In December
no, I've got a full set as well, and I fully intend of sticking them on eBay at some point and actually making a surprising amount of money off of it. But autumn ends end of November. But railways have these milestones in, which is the points at which timetables change. And there are 2 big points for that every year. There's May and there's December.
You know the quirk? Sorry, I keep going off on tangents because you keep making me think of interesting things. People say, oh, it's always the 2nd December of every year, second Sunday of every December. It's not. It's the first Sunday after the second Saturday, which I love. It's just a great quirk.
I can top you on that because actually the reason why in the UK we only used to have 1 point in the year where we generally change all the timetables.
Oh, I know this. Is it the Germans?
It's sort of. It's essentially because of Eurostar. It was the moment that Eurostar arrived, that meant that suddenly we needed to sync up all of periodically our railway timetables with timetables across Europe, which suddenly means you need to be having a timetable change point that aligns with when they do it in Europe. And that was the point where they introduced a second one. So actually the reason why we have a May timetable change and a December timetable change as kind of places you can do it
is because of Eurostar. And before that we just had the December one.
Yeah.
And then we had to have the May one.
I can't remember which way round it was. I always get confused.
But back on track with Crossrail. So you think end of November, which would be in time for the December 2019
So you could then
timetable.
turn around and say you could conceivably do December, beginning of December.
But is it going to be a full service, or the whispers that are coming out now is that there might be a ghost service or a preview pattern, like they did when the Jubilee Line extension opened? They first ran Stratford to North Greenwich as a shuttle only. Yeah. What might happen with Elizabeth Line?
So remember that the big problem they've got at the moment is that the testing. That's the thing they're doing now, and by what TfL have been very clever with this in terms of they've said, right, we're pushing it right back to December. That doesn't mean that they need all of that time to do it. But what they've done is they've done something that, again, back to Thameslink, we've repeatedly said in recent months that we want rail companies to be brave. We want them to make brave decisions. TfL have done this, Crossrail have done this. They've turned around and said, look, what is the latest we could possibly open it? And let's just say that. Let's manage expectations. Let's say that's when at the latest we will do it. That doesn't mean they can't do it a bit earlier. Because again, remember what we were talking about, that this is a self-contained railway. This first bit that opens first, that Abbey Wood to Paddington, is self-contained. It doesn't need a timetable change to start running those things, really. So one of the things that kind of our betting money on in LR Towers is that we reckon you will see in the summer probably a more limited trial service of some time. It might just run 1 day a week. It might run a Sunday, but it'll be Abbey Wood to, say, Canary Wharf.
Hang on. So there's bets now that a 1 day a week Sunday service might run on part of the Elizabeth Line in the summer of next year.
Yeah, it might be a sort of quiet evening, like in an evening service.
As a kind of way of easing it in.
Yeah, Yeah.
And will they publicly announce it, or will they just quietly do it? And it'll just be all the train nerds that go, because we'll all find out and tell each other.
We'll all be exactly the same group of people that are there for the East London line opening, for everything else. We'll all be sitting there on the same train as usual, we're going through. I don't know what they'll do with it. We don't know. I don't think TfL know really yet. Okay. What they've done is they've gone, we'll give ourselves that option. And I think that's what we might see.
Excuse me, a buffer.
They have given themselves.
I had to go there. Sorry.
They have given themselves a buffer. You know, they try and work out how you make your title out of that one. You need to get the buffer in there somehow. Crossrail on the buffers? Question mark.
Yeah. Okay.
But they've given themselves enough time that they can do it.
So one thing we must talk about is revenue, because although before I do, I just want to acknowledge that obviously some people are affected, but I think sadly it's a minority, because only a small number of people can claim that, oh, hang on, I was going to buy a house at Woolwich, or I'd set up a job, or I have accessible needs. Those are obviously things which are really important, but doesn't apply to the majority. My view is that the majority of people, if you go and stood at Farringdon this morning, and people going to work, come out the tube station, most of them are aware that there are these blue hoardings. But I bet it wouldn't take you long to find someone that went, oh, new railway? Oh, yeah, I was vaguely aware of it. But they don't really care. Until it's actually open, people go, oh, what's that, new railway? And because we're in this transport nerd bubble, we know everything. And we forget that we know everything, and that most regular people don't know everything, right? So,
which again is why for most people it doesn't matter. But like you say, there are groups that are hit much harder by this.
Yeah.
Because Crossrail will be a fully accessible railway.
Yeah.
And a lot of London's railways aren't. So until that opens, that does limit for some people who may have been looking to go, right, well actually finally I'm going to have an accessible way of getting to various places that I wouldn't be able to get to before, for work, for pleasure, for everything else. They're going to have to wait another year. And that is a shame.
Yeah.
And they are the people who are impacted.
Yeah. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and then that to lead into the other big thing which people are saying, which is revenue, okay? Because some people have come out and said, well, hang on, is this going to hit the TfL coffers? They were going to have all these new passengers come through and make whole loads of money. And in my logical brain, I'm like, well, hang on, you don't suddenly magic up. 100,000 people don't get up on a Monday morning and go, oh, new railway, I'll go to get this train that I've never got before. People will still go to work to London, but they'll just take a different route. So how much revenue are they really going to be missing out on for these?
Yeah,
for these
see,
months?
this is a weird one. And again, you get into kind of accountancy spreadsheets, which, I mean, even I struggle to enjoy.
Even in
weird.
LR Tower's spreadsheet
I'm
world.
Weird. Yeah, it's weirdly, to begin with, it almost actually saves TfL money by not opening it in the short term.
I'm just going to get Gareth to repeat that. I'm sorry, wind back 10 seconds.
So on a very, very short-term basis, so let's talk the end of this budget year, it will probably slightly save TfL money not to open Crossrail.
That makes no sense in my brain. Could you explain how?
And it's for exactly the reason you just said there, which is that ultimately a lot of Crossrail's passengers are, how Crossrail is expected to get passengers is by taking them off of other services in London that are busy already. So the key ones in that are Circle Line, Central Line, and South Eastern services. Now, by not opening, those passengers are still going to use those services. So TfL isn't losing the money from those passengers because it's still got them. It's missing out on some new money from people who literally can't squeeze onto a train at Stratford at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's not losing that money. And the passengers who are on South Eastern, well, it doesn't get that money already anyway. So again, it's not losing money there. But also, it takes time for new railways to get full. They don't fill up straight away. Normally it can take up to a year or beyond for a railway to fill up, a new railway to fill up. And that's actually TfL's estimates with Crossrail, with the Elizabeth line. Once it's open, it's going to take a year before it fills up to a level that makes them money. And that's because even though you haven't got passengers, you've still got to run virtually a full service. You still need to be running those trains at 2-minute intervals, because otherwise people aren't going to want to get on it to begin with. So new railways are almost a loss leader. You have to run them at a loss because you have to run the full service pattern, or near enough, before the passengers start to arrive. You know, if you build it, they will come, but they won't come straight away.
That's my line. I should now tag on, but they won't come straight away. That's my new catchphrase.
Yeah,
can I borrow that as well?
You absolutely can. That's your first single. You know, if you build it, they will come, and then in kind of
brackets.
Like brackets, but not straight away.
So Purple Train, the album,
yeah,
first single release. Yeah, what's the B-side going to be called? So to just B-side tracks for this.
Yeah, there you go. What's the B-side track for Geoff's Crossrail concept album?
There's going to be a proportion of my viewers on YouTube who are so young, they'll be going, what's a B-side?
Yeah, what's a B-side? You know,
oh,
yeah.
I love how we talk about trains, but we also talk about pop culture and movies and records.
Yeah,
and
trouble is
CDs.
it's like 30-year-old pop culture now, which always makes me feel slightly old. I mean, this does actually lead on to one thing that TfL, they do lose money in the long term.
Yeah.
Because the longer they delay in opening this, the longer it's going to take it to fill up. And a lot of their budgets are all currently built on the idea that from 2020 onwards, it will be filled up. But obviously, if they're not opening it until 2019, that's going to knock everything back.
And do you think it's going to be full on day one? Do you think all the Central Line people that'll go, crikey, we don't have to swelter on this hot Central Line train, are going to go, well, hey, just change at Stratford to the Crossrail train?
No,
because
because
is Central Line going to be empty?
There's a trust element that kicks in with this. And again, this is why you have to run a full service to begin with, because you need people to trust that you're going to run a service. So they need to know that service is going to get them to work on time every day reliably. So they need to see it running well. So it won't fill up straight away, but it will fill up over time. And we actually think it will fill up quicker than Crossrail and TfL think. We think it will fill up in 9 months maybe, rather than 12. And that'll help TfL out, but we do think they're being a bit conservative in how quickly they think it will fill up.
I should point out, London Reconnections, probably people know you as like a writer and you and your volunteer team, and we'll give you a plug on your website in a minute. They think of you as railways, but you do also do other transport, including buses,
Yes.
am I right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention buses because somewhere in Palestra and Southwark, there was a whole team of people that sat around going, right, chaps, we need to change where the buses go upon Elizabeth Line opening, because that has an effect. And presumably all those bus changes have now been put on hold as well.
Yes, I mean, and that's another group of people that you should never, ever, ever play fantasy football with, because they are really good at spreadsheets too.
Hang on, who's better, the Chiltern timetablers or the bus boys of Palestra?
I suspect it'll be the bus boys,
Really?
because actually their stuff is really complex. And as you say, one of the things that TfL are bleeding money on London buses, and this is because the government, and over the course of a number of years, has essentially cut back on the subsidy it provides to London buses.
But it was hilarious the other day, on the front page of the Evening Standard, was that George Osborne was complaining about this. But it's like that when, we're going to get all political, when the Windrush thing kicked off, there was a hilarious meme going around online with Theresa May going, find me the Home Secretary from 5 years ago. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So again, it's George Osborne going,
Yeah.
well, why has there been money cut to the, oh, I see, that was me.
No, George Osborne turning around as editor of the Evening Standard and moaning about budgets and TfL's money is like, and he's like, why is this the case? And it's going, well, check your outlook, mate. Go back in your archive, because you did it. You know, you were the Chancellor.
Right.
But yeah, they cut all of that money, and that's a big hole in TfL's budget. And actually, a lot of their people will talk about how the fares freeze is impacting TfL and things, and it is. But actually, the biggest impact is actually the loss of that subsidy. That subsidy was about 700 million quid. That's not a small amount of change.
Yeah.
And actually, TfL needs to look at buses and go, and it was overdue anyway, but go, what routes are in the right place, what routes aren't? What routes can we, with Crossrail opening, can we get rid of some routes to central London? You know, can we consolidate some? We're in Walthamstow. There's the 48 and the 58, like just over the trees that these guys can't see behind us over there. There's some trees, there's a big road. And behind that road, there are 48 and 55 buses running. Now, arguably, if you've got Crossrail and if it's running, does that allow you to look at which of those routes you keep? Do you extend one and maybe cut back on the other? That whole reshaping of the bus network, which would save TfL money, can't happen until Crossrail is open.
Okay. So in a way, you were saying about revenue, they're actually still making a big loss on the buses until that happens. So maybe that is where the dead.
And this is where the revenue
is.
hit comes in. Is it's not so much what happens now. It's that this doesn't necessarily change TfL's financial position in 2018-19. It doesn't necessarily change it in 2019-2020, but it does change it once you start getting beyond that. They will have to redo their entire business plan based on delaying this.
So to summarise, it is still coming, even though it's not shown as a proposed line on a tube map, but that's a whole other discussion. The buses thing, they'll sort out. It will be great. It will be a footnote in the history, and you are excited about Crossrail still, yes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's big, it's shiny, it's a lovely new railway, and at heart I'm a massive train nerd, so why wouldn't I be excited about it? I am absolutely determined as well. I need it to open, because the one thing I did on the East London line when it opened is I made damn sure that I was the first person to pub crawl my way back up the East London line. So I am absolutely...
Could there be an Elizabeth Line crawl?
I am determined to be the first person again to do a 10 pub crawl on the core section of the Elizabeth Line off that first train.
I'm struggling to think where the nearest pub to Abbey Wood station is. I'm sure an Abbey Wood local would love to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, stick those ones in the comments because I need to know that. But like, this is what we will do, and that's why I'm excited for it to open as much as anything else. I have a record to maintain here. I may not have run the tube very fast, but I have drunk it faster than most people.
There we go. Between us, we have all angles covered. This is where we plug London Reconnections. You're amazing. Well, you took over from an old WordPress blog, you turned it into a decent website and then a super polished website with a great team of volunteer writers. But you've also turned it into, because it's such a quality product, people said we want this as a printed product as well. So here's where you plug London Reconnections, Gareth.
Yeah, so we started ourselves as a blog over 10 years ago now. And really what we've done is, our mission has always been to say that actually there's lots and lots of places out there that will write 500 words or do a tiny little bit on what's happening. But what you really need to know sometimes is you need to know in depth what's actually going on. So we don't write a lot, we write maybe once a week, and we will write the 4,000, 5,000 word piece explaining why something happening, hopefully in a reasonably readable way, but that's our goal. We do that. And yeah, we've discovered a while back that I kept getting people at conferences telling me, oh, I love your stuff, but because it is quite long, what I do is I print it out and read it on the loo, or I read it on the tube. So we were like, well, actually, we're going to do the weirdest thing ever and try going the other way around and going into print. So actually, since then, we did it for a test volume, and now we're about to start doing it again.
I was going to say, because it stopped, because I didn't get any of the printed ones. I just paid for it and downloaded the PDFs. Yeah. But I can still read it on my iPad.
Yeah, and so actually, we deliberately designed it so that it's actually slightly smaller format. It's more like a design magazine in visual terms.
It is.
We wanted to make a magazine you weren't embarrassed to be caught reading on the tube. And there are still some back issues from Volume 1 that people can buy, but we'll be bringing back, for Volume 2, we'll bring it back again. But yeah, our goal really is write the big stuff that other people aren't covering well. And that's what we focus on. And we enjoy doing it. We're all volunteers. You know, the money we raise from that, from our Patreon, from everything else, it supports the site. And occasionally it pays for a round of drinks for the editorial team or whatever else. But really we do it because we love it.
And there is like a regular London Reconnections pub meet-up railway nerd night.
Yes, there absolutely is. And the second Thursday of every month down in Southwark, we do a pub meet. And if you do want to pop along and meet people who build escalators and design signalling systems and argue about trains and history and everything else, it's a great place to be.
Trouble is, you've just told that to almost 80,000 people on YouTube, but maybe the pub can't hold that many people.
I'm sure the pub would be very happy. We're always upstairs. But yeah, instructions are on the website.
So the website is, let's put it on screen. Can you do make some motion as if your hand is somehow...
somewhere around sort of there.
But links in the description. They can follow London Reconnections on Twitter at LonRec.
Yeah, at LonRec on Twitter, which
You're
I assume is also there. Yeah, I am at Garius on Twitter.
That's just your personal ramblings.
That's my personal ramblings. If you want stuff like that, if you want the slightly more ludicrous takes on transport, that's where you'll find me rewriting Eminem songs to be about Crossrail opening and everything else.
He did do that.
That's where I post when I get bored. That's the unofficial LR stream.
Gareth, thank you very much.
Always good.
Pleasure.